Welcome to the channel. I am Charlie, and today we are checking out what remains from the May 18th, 1980 eruption. 44 years later, we're going to be out here looking at vehicles that survived the blast, a sunken A-frame, a Coke glass from Harry Truman, and a lot of history that survived that tragic day. So we were outside of Kidd Valley, Washington, at the Fire Mountain Grill, and we're checking out one of the remains from the eruption of Mount St. Helens. And it is this Weyerhaeuser truck that has sat here for 44 years. And as you can see, Mother Nature has reclaimed. This truck is known for having a tree growing right through it. Tree's probably 30, maybe 40 feet tall. It is just absolutely amazing that this truck has sat here for 44 years. You can actually see inside, part of a seat belt. This is really cool. Actually looks like you can still kind of read the odometer. It is at 128,078 miles. I mean, the steering wheel is in surprisingly good shape. Truck 936, Weyerhaeuser out of Longview. You can see one of the stacks is broken off, rust probably. And I do believe that is probably a mix of dirt and ash from the eruption. So we are out here at the North Fork Survivors Gift Shop, and they have a lot of very special relics from the eruption. And one thing you might be greeted with is this big guy right here. 22 foot tall. The man, the myth, the legend. You can't miss him. This statue is actually made from ash of the volcano of the eruption and concrete. Very detailed. And now you know why you call him Bigfoot. The original figure of Bigfoot was located where the wood shed was here in this picture. You can see from the picture the mud flow. It says the mud flow that came into the area was about 5 feet deep and 100 degrees. This happened about 8 hours after the eruption. And the consistency of wet cement. And was traveling downstream at about 35 miles per hour. There's some pictures of Mr. Bigfoot being constructed. So this is the famous sunken A-frame. It was actually only a few weeks from being finished when the eruption happened. And as you can see, the first floor is now in the basement. The eruption actually melted ice caps at the top of the mountain, causing approximately 46 billion gallons of water to surge down the mountain, collecting rock, mud, and trees, basically destroying everything in its path, but it reshaped this whole valley. and gave this person a basement. Now this whole area is actually roped off. If you come out here, please don't go behind the rope. Be respectful. We were actually given permission by Joe and his wife who run this. We have a cat coming towards us right now as we speak. Apparently the cat wants to be on camera. Hi, kitty cat. Hey. Always pet a cat. So we are not able to actually get inside. Safety reasons. I mean, it has been 44 years, so we're gonna sneak the camera in through some crevices and see what we can see. This is actually the second floor, now ground level. Looks like a bedroom there in the back, and a old chair. Would actually be a very relaxing view. Gonna try to get the camera down here in this window, see if we can see anything. So they have some vehicles out here. This first one here was actually Robert Landsberg's vehicle. He was 48, and he was a freelance photographer from Portland. The weekend of the eruption, he drove this 1969 Dodge Coronet station wagon up the South Fork of the Toutle River to take pictures of the mountain. On Saturday evening, he camped near the volcano and wrote in his journal, "Feel right on the verge of something." The morning of May 18th, he woke early and drove a bit farther up the road, stopping less than 4 miles west of the volcano summit. He took a series of photographs after the mountain erupted and then lay on top of his backpack in an effort to protect the film. His photographs were later discovered and published in National Geographic magazine of January 1981. The remains of this Chevy Love pickup are that of Harold and Joyce Kirkpatrick. Harold Kirkpatrick, 33, and his cousin Joyce, also 33, were near their camp on a hill with their Chevy Love northwest of Elk Rock, 12 miles west of Mount St. Helens. When the volcano erupted, Joyce was a supervisor at an egg processing plant, and Harold was a pipe fitter in Newburgh, Oregon. Joyce was divorced and would often take her 2 sons and daughter on weekend outings to the northwest side of Mount St. Helens, but her children could not make the trip that weekend. Arlene and Jolene Edwards. Arlene, 37, and her daughter Jolene, 19, left their Portland home on the morning of May 18th and navigated this Dodge W100 up logging roads to a viewpoint south of Elk Rock, 10 miles northwest of the mountain. Arlene was a freelance photographer. Jolene was a waitress engaged to her high school sweetheart. They scrambled up to the 3,800-foot summit of Elk Rock with their dogs and were taking photographs when the mountain erupted. There is one more vehicle that we're going to take a look at that is actually not out here. It is inside, and that is of Reed Blackburn's Volvo. Reed was a 27-year-old photographer for the Columbian newspaper in Vancouver. He was also on assignment for the National Geographic as well as the USGS.
So what else do you want to look at? The North Fork Survivors Museum and Establishment is your playground.
It is a very interesting, intriguing playground. So much history.
Yes, I went on this tangent. So people that are watching, they may know me from the Cascade Sasquatch Research Organization, but now I've gone on this tangent with Mount St. Helens stuff, and it's gotten uglier and uglier and uglier. I'm one of like when I go to a way back in the day, I go to a job interview and they say, "What is one of your most outstanding personality traits that would be beneficial to the business?" Let me think about that. Everything I do, I take way too far, and then it gets to a point where nobody even knows what's going on anymore. And so that's my outstanding personality trait. With the Mount St. Helens stuff, that's what's happened here. It started as a smaller thing and then got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's this entire life mission to preserve these people's memories. So we specialize here in the memories of people that were associated with the eruption, people that lost their lives, as well as those that lost homes and communities affected, and we're rescue personnel, cleanup, National Guard, law enforcement, emergency services of all kinds. It's just loggers, reclamation loggers. All these people need to be recognized in this event because basically, when you go to the visitor centers in this area, they talk about, volcanology, geology, environmental recovery, and well, it's 57 people that died. There's communities gone, and it's changed the Northwest forever. We still see the effects of it, and that needs to be recognized. And so that's what I do here. I put faces and stories to the names on the plaque. I believe you took a tour with the cars outside.
I did.
And what did you learn out there? Ooh.
A lot of stories.
A lot of juicy stories, absolutely. Those vehicles were recovered between 1980 and 1981 by my friend Clara Otteson. She lived in Silver Lake, and she recovered them for a museum, and the idea was a great idea with bad timing. People were still recovering and from the eruption emotionally, and then all of a sudden she has all their belongings in a museum to be seen. Now, in Clara's defense, she spoke to each and every one of the families to make sure that she had permission to display these things. She wanted to make sure she wasn't hurting anybody's feelings by just taking their loved one's vehicle or personal items and just putting them on display. However, the public reception didn't work. They didn't care that she had permission and blessings of the families. They just didn't like it. There was a lot of emotion that you can't talk to everybody. And the whole thing just came to a screeching halt in less than 2 years. So she takes all these items, brings them back to her home. The whole project's a total loss. We know she spent about $96,000 in 1980 to recover all these things. And she brings it back to her home and drops the cars on the property and puts all these other items in a building, and they sit there for the next 43 years. And basically, I knew Clara for 12 years, talking back and forth. She's a historian like myself, really knowledgeable with stuff, and she would always be like, she liked to tick me off, basically. So, yeah.
We all have one of those friends.
We all have one of those friends that's super smart, that just likes to dangle stuff in front of you to annoy the heck out of you. And so she would be like, yeah, I have this amazing Mount St. Helens collection. I'm a Mount St. Helens guy. Can I see it? No, you can't see it. Okay. Would you sell it? I'll bring it to the shop here. And that way the public can see it. No, never sell it. Never. So why are you telling me? And it's just to annoy me, right? The last time I saw her here, she was standing at the front door and again brought up, oh yeah, you're forgetting. I've got this amazing Mount St. Helens collection. Clara, can I come and see it? I'll come by tomorrow morning. No. We're not going to get into that. Well, it was good seeing you. I'll talk to you soon. And she drives away. I turn to Diana and I say, this isn't over. It'll come around. This circle will complete. Somehow, I have no idea, but it'll complete. Well, unfortunately, 2 years ago, it completed when she passed away, and she left word with her son to contact me to go and look at this collection. And basically, he said, yeah, I have some cool Mount St. Helens items here, a couple vehicles from the eruption. And I was like, ooh, vehicles? That could be interesting, right? I wonder what kind of items. Probably photographs, books, there's not much left. And then I go there, and there's quite a few vehicles, and a 20 by 60 building filled front to back with items like original relics, stuff that that nobody knew existed, iconic things. Just looking around the room here, we have, you know, Harry Truman's Coke glass, which came out of his Prindle home, his shaving kit. We have items from Reed Blackburn here, Robert Landsberg. These are names that are well known. Arlene and Jolene Edwards out of Portland, Oregon. These are people that are known with the eruption. I mean, Reed Blackburn here in the Northwest, he's one of our own from the Columbian in Vancouver. Just iconic, individual and very talented individual is lost in this eruption. And his story is associated with the most famous photo ever taken after the eruption. And Charlie's killer with editing. So right here you can put the photo from Cold Water 1 with the car buried in ash right up to the doors. And the photo is the car buried in ash, and there's a gentleman in a red jacket kneeled down with a helicopter looking into the car. That's Don Swanson out of it was his colleague from the USGS that had gone out the following day with the hopes that maybe Reed had survived the eruption. And they were pretty sure he hadn't, but there's always that hope with your friend that maybe something happened that we didn't know. And unfortunately, Reed was lost in the eruption, and he was recovered 2 days later. So quite an amazing story. We know that he stood there for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. He shot 4 photos using remote operated camera, ham radio operated camera. He did his job right to the end as this cloud is expanding at 400 miles an hour in front of him. And he's 7.5 miles away. It's 2 minutes 40 seconds. He shoots the photos, takes his notepad, puts it inside of a transmitter box on the ground, grabs his camera bag, throws it in the car, jumps in the driver's seat, and braces for impact. And this surge goes over him at 400 miles an hour and 392 degrees Fahrenheit, blows the windows out, goes right through, cooks the interior of the car. And he's officially the first victim on paper. You know, I have a lot of respect for people that do their job right to the end, right, to try and get that piece of data and so forth. Reed inspired what we do here with everybody, because we know one of the things he would do for fun on the side is he would stop at schools to talk to kids about volcanology, geology, photojournalism. He did it on his own time. We know Kelso Longview, Castle Rock, and Tudor Lake Elementary had stopped in to talk to kids. And when I go to schools now and I do presentations, I actually take some of his items with me. We have his tape collection, we have his flashlight here from Cold Water 1, a whole bunch of other items. And they go with me to schools now to tell this story and allow kids to be able to see these items that were affected by this pyroclastic surge at almost 400 degrees Fahrenheit at 7.5 miles away. There's a very, very big difference between, like, we have this rock sitting here. Well, this was recovered from 7.5 miles away at almost 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Big deal, it's a rock. When you show somebody's tape collection that is melted at 7.5 miles away, that leaves an impact. It gives clarity as to how powerful this event was. And so now we bring his items and do these presentations, which means that by definition, he's still teaching after 44 years in a different capacity, right? Are you really gone if you're not forgotten? And so this legacy stays on with, or continues on with education in a different sense. The car in the famous picture, according to history, because we all know, the viewers, Google and Wikipedia are just like the law of the land. They know everything. Well, according to Google and Wikipedia, his car was pulled out in 1981 and it was scrapped, and that was the end of it. And now let's get back to reality and research, and all of a sudden, 42 years later, my team and I recover the car sitting on Clara's property. And I secretly moved it over here into the building and brought it inside and started a 1-year preservation process on it to restore the car as close back to where it was at in 1980, because the weather destroyed a lot of it just from sitting out. In the interim, well, I can't release any information on this car because Reed Blackburn's widow is still with us in Vancouver. And so for me to let it get out on the internet with photos or documentary or whatever, and then she sees it not knowing the car exists, is absolutely horrendous to do to somebody. So got in touch with Faye through channels and managed to get her blessings to tell her husband's story, show the car, and continue this legacy of education in the name of Reed Blackburn. And so now we can show the car, we can talk about it, we can do this. The big secret is done. However, we're still in the process of putting together a formal narrative for people to walk through, and so nobody's really filmed it. So, what do you think? I think Charlie checks out. Should take a little walk, and maybe we'll show you some cool stuff.
Let's go
What do you
check it
think?
out.
You want to go check it out? All
Yeah.
right, let's go. See, people don't give YouTubers any kind of credit, right? All day he's been doing this. It's people think you just like film for 1 minute and then it's done. Nope, hours and hours and hours, and then you got to go and you got to edit it, which is even scarier.
And then, of course, the weather changes.
Yeah, and it's another one of these glorious sunny Washington days. Very, very powerful reminder of the eruption, and you can walk in first. So this is a 1969 Volvo 144S. It was recovered from the Coldwater Run observation point. We know now, telling the story of Clara and her team recovering all this stuff, that this was removed on May 9th of 1981. And so almost exactly a year later. When I found it, the roof had been collapsed in. It was filled with 2,500 pounds of ash that had to all be removed. This little black shovel that I had, plastic shovel, one bucket full at a time. And then, well, how do you come up with the numbers? Well, you fill a bucket and you weigh it, and then you count buckets and you come up with a number. A lot of buckets it had to do. And when we brought this in the building, this part of the building was existing. It's basically just being refaced. It was kind of nice because I didn't have to do any kind of construction except some sheetrock and make it look pretty. But I brought the car in and worked on it first, which is, if you think about it, the most inefficient way to do this. It should have finished the interior and then bring the car in. But the car was outside. It took precedence over the interior of the building. So now I have to work around this vehicle in the middle of it. So for the people that are watching at home are going, wow, he's still working. You got a car sitting in the middle. That's pretty stupid. Yeah, it is, but it was a necessary evil to protect the car. Mixed in here was with this vehicle are other items that are spread throughout here. And if you want to pan across, I'll walk over here and then we can kind of walk around. We have items that are put out, and right now, even though the museum is still being worked on, these items are out right now because my colleague Richard Waite from the Cascades Volcano Observatory had come here about 2 weeks ago to look at all these items in person. He had written a book called In the Path of Destruction. And if you ever have the opportunity to pick up the book, or you want to read a really good book on the subject, In the Path of Destruction by Richard Waite is my #1 recommendation on the subject. It is absolutely accurate, very, very well done documentation of this event and the people that were involved with it. So in his book, he mentions a lot of these items, and so we put them out. So when he comes here, he's never seen them in person, and kind of got to look through. We have items here from, these are from Robert Landsberg's 69 Dodge Coronet 500. We have items out of his glove compartment. The film cartridges on the top there are from Dave Crockett from Como Television, who filmed that famous film, I'm walking towards the only light I can see, and he's covered in ash. We have Reed's belongings in the back here, the tapes I was talking about that are melted, and some calculator and some items from inside of the car. To the left of that, these items here are all from, there's a shirt, a model, a panoramic, some sulfur from the north vent on the 8086 dome in the crater of Mount St. Helens. And these all came from an independent geologist by the name of Charlie Anderson, who studied the crater glacier literally from the first snowflake until the end of his career in the early 2000s, or late 2000s actually, almost 2010. And unfortunately, he has passed about 2.5 years ago, and his daughter Jennifer McGow donated the entirety of his research here. This is just a small piece of that. We have 2 doors here from the car that was driven by Robert Landsberg, and these show what this pyroclastic surge did at 4.5 miles away from the mountain on the morning of May 18th. This chainsaw here was donated by a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Tryon out of Vader, Washington, was friends with Kevin Bowers, who was Wally Bowers' son. So Wally Bowers was a Weyerhaeuser logger working with Tom Godwa up at Fawn Lake on the morning of May 18th. Their area was devastated by the eruption, and unfortunately they were never found. Kevin Bowers and his family went looking, as a lot of people did, because recovery forces, rescue personnel, they were completely overwhelmed, and so a lot of families went out to go find their family members, and Kevin Bowers found his dad's chainsaw. He knows he bought it in 1979 and recovered it. And he had given this chainsaw to Dwayne Tryon, and Dwayne donated it to us about 2 months ago. I want to pick that up. This is the dashboard off of the 1969 Dodge Coronet 500. This is Robert Landsberg's car. There was a lot of talk as to whether he had tried to drive away or get away from the eruption. When we turned the car over last year for a survey in the end of July and September of 2023, the keys were still in the ignition. Car was still in park. Parking brake was on. We know absolutely that he did not try and drive away. And my colleague Dave Keeler and I decided to recover the dashboard and reconstruct it as an educational piece. One, to tell Mr. Landsberg's story, and 2, to tell the story of this pyroclastic surge and how it affected the vehicle. Only existing set of clothes from Harry Truman, sitting right here. These were recovered from his secondary home in 1980 in Prindle, Washington. It was known by Harry as Tanglewood, or he would call it Eddie's dollhouse, because it was essentially put together for his wife Eddie, and everything inside of it reflected her personality. And in fact, after she passed in 1975, Harry wouldn't go back to the location anymore. It just bothered him too much. And my friend Clara recovered the clothes and the boots, as well as Harry's scrapbook right here, brochures, the tissue box belonged to Eddie. There's watches and some other little miscellaneous items in a cup that Harry had dropped in there. Her sewing little bench here, if you open this up, I don't have gloves with me, but if you open this up, there's little compartments inside it for sewing. The chair cover and the umbrella came from the campsite of Harold and Joyce Kirkpatrick, who were recovered in October of 1980 near, they were in an area known as Steamboat Rocks near Elk Rock, and they were found by reclamation loggers very late after the eruption, and so those are from their campsite. The items that are here on the table are recent acquisitions, and these are items out of the mud flow that have been found by metal detector. The blouse and the jacket actually came out of Arlene and Jolene Edwards' Dodge W100. We believe that they belong to Jolene Edwards, and they had some extra clothes with them that were still in the vehicle, and we recovered them for preservation. The jacket is very, very short, if you notice, and that's because of the almost 400-degree surge that went over and immediately shrunk the material. The flag in the back belonged to a gentleman by the name of Pat Kilgore, who used to spend a lot of time at the Kidd Valley store and was known as the Snake Man of Kidd Valley. And he had a large boa constrictor, would hang out at the store, talk to tourists, take pictures, really fun person. And he lived by St. Helens Loop up in the valley, and after the eruption, when the area was closed off, his home was still intact. However, they wouldn't let him go home. And he went into that property and he flew that flag in protest for almost a year and a half, basically saying, "This is America, I should be able to go home." And eventually he did win, and he went back home and he pulled that flag down, and my friend Clara recovered it. Mr. Kilgore actually wrote the dates on it of when that flag flew. It's severely bleached from being out in the sun, ash, no trees, for a year and a half. It was a pretty intense environment up there at that time. Recent acquisition we have here that's a biggie, actually. And you'll be the first ever to film this, to see it, because it's literally only been here a few days. We've made contact, and a new friend, a gentleman by the name of Robert Rogers. For anybody watching, if you want to read a very fascinating story, is look up an article called "The Mount St. Helens Trespasser," and it talks about Robert Rogers and his friend Francisco Valenzuela, who are actually the closest people to the eruption to have survived. Very, very close. We're talking hundreds of yards at this point. He had actually seen Robert Landsberg at distance that morning, was up above him. The surge happens, goes by him. Robert Rogers takes pictures, and Francisco Valenzuela takes pictures, and they're known for surviving this eruption, getting these extraordinary photographs. Well, Robert Rogers decides to start going into the blast zone of Mount St. Helens after the eruption, and starts kind of doing these excursions and documenting what happened in there. At the time, it was illegal. He shouldn't have done it. And but yet his curiosity and his ingenuity allowed him to be able to pull this off. And he actually now holds the record for being the first person to ever summit Mount St. Helens after the eruption. He did it illegally, but he still did it. He's the first person. And he even walked through a lot of the locations where vehicles were destroyed, and one of them being Robert Landsberg's location. And when he walked through, we know that Robert Landsberg was using a wooden tripod, and it wasn't recovered. And then we find out that Robert Rogers picked it up and has had it for the last 44 years. And in a recent meeting that will actually be going over on my channel, where people can actually see this conversation with Robert Rogers, he gave us the tripod, and right behind me, it has just been prepped. But there you are. You're the first one to film Robert Landsberg's tripod that was recovered in roughly July of 1980 after the eruption.
That has definitely held up very well.
Yeah, it was
Over
pretty
the last
extraordinary when he pulled that out.
44 years?
44 years. Yeah, this was hit by a pyroclastic surge in excess of 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The leg on this one side is broken. There's a foam insert now to support that.
So that wraps up today's video. I hope you guys had a great time. I hope you had as much fun as I did exploring some of the remains of Mount St. Helens. And if you like this video, please do me a favor, give it a like. Please comment your favorite part of the video, what you liked most, and perhaps somewhere you'd like to see next. So on that note, you guys be safe, have fun, and we'll see you down the road in the next adventure. And a special shout out to the North Fork Survivors Museum gift shop. They are doing a lot of great things out here.